Okay, so today we're going to talk about the law, especially criminal law, beginning Unit 7. And usually when people think of the law, they think of law and order. I know I do. I'm going to skim through your warm-ups. Usually when I think of criminal law, I hear the law and order start in my head. In the criminal justice system, there are two separate but equally important groups who enforce the law, ... and then you hear ding ding, and then law and order starts. When I hear criminal law, that's what I think of. And here's our quote from Thomas Jefferson. He says, "If God has made it a law in the nature of man to pursue his own happiness, he has left him free in the choice of place as well as mode, and we may safely call on the whole body of English jurists to produce the map on which nature has traced for each individual the geographic line which she forbids him to cross in pursuit of happiness." So basically, Thomas Jefferson says that a man or a woman is free to do what they wish and be who they want to be. However, the law is in place so that your rights and your freedoms don't impose on anyone else's. So today we're starting with criminal law again. And what is criminal law? It protects people from harm, and it punishes those who do harm to others. So here's a review of criminal law versus civil law. With criminal law, a law was broken. You might have stolen something from someone. You might have robbed a convenience store. You might have set someone's yard on fire, put graffiti up on a wall, but you have broken a law somehow. And with civil law, a contract was broken. You didn't actually break a law. However, you did sign a legal document, and you had to keep your word, and you have broken your word. You've not kept up your end of the contract. And remember, a contract, back to Unit 1, is an agreement between two people, and you have not held up your end of the contract. So criminal law and federalism, we have 3 levels. Again, federal, state, and local. At the federal level, who enforces criminal law, who is worried about criminal law? You have all of the layers of this sad cake. The Supreme Court, appellate courts, and district courts all deal with criminal law and enforce the law. At the state level, again, you have this SASD cake. These two are review. You have the Supreme Court at the state level, appellate, superior, and district. And then you have local courts, otherwise known as municipal courts. They all share power, and they all make sure that laws are followed, and if laws are broken, that they are enforced and someone is being punished or is paying back whatever they owe for the law. Okay, so there's 4 big words you need to know. The first one is presumption of innocence. That means you are innocent until you are proven guilty by the court during your trial. But does this always happen? Probably not. You'll remember we've talked about the O.J. Simpson case before. Most people thought that O.J. Simpson was guilty of murder, even though he was acquitted. We also know that the Trayvon Martin case and Trayvon Brown case, that some people thought that the people who shot them were also guilty. However, technically, in the eyes of the court, you are innocent until proven guilty, no matter what the public thinks. The second big word you need to know is an impartial tribunal. This means, impartial means that you don't have a side. Tribunal is just the people that are participating in the judicial process. So you've got the right to have an unbiased group of people during your judicial process. This includes your judge, all 12 members of the jury, the prosecutor, and the defense. The third thing you need to know is the right of appeal. Your case can be reviewed if you think the law has been applied unfairly. But remember, disagreeing with your verdict and appealing are 2 different things. So if you look through your case and you think, I didn't have the right to my lawyer this whole time, you can appeal the verdict of your case due to you not having a lawyer. However, if you robbed the Handy Mart and you are found guilty of robbing the Handy Mart, you can't appeal the decision if you think the law has been applied unfairly. However, if you go to appeals court and the 3-judge panel feels that the law has been applied fairly and you just don't like the verdict, they're going to keep your decision. They're going to have a stare decisis. They're going to let the decision stand. So remember, this is Clarence Earl Gideon, and he decided to appeal his case because he did not have the right to an attorney. He was denied counsel because he couldn't afford it. So the third one, again, you have the right of appeal. Your fourth big word you need to know is adversarial nature of the court. This means that cases are heard to reach a verdict and decide whether or not someone is guilty. It's not to recant the whole story. So, as our friend over here, Jack Nicklaus, says, you can't handle the truth. Well, the court's job is not to figure out the entire story and worry about all the details of your case. The court is deciding whether or not you're going to be found guilty or innocent. Yes, they are going to review some details of your case. However, they're not going to look at every single small detail. They're worried about the details that can determine whether or not you're guilty. So there are a few different types of law. The first one is constitutional law, and of course, like the name says, it deals with the Constitution, and it's based on precedent. And again, precedent is a reviewed term. Judges make decisions based on past cases. President Obama was a constitutional lawyer before becoming a senator for Illinois and then to the presidency. An example of this, you must be informed of your rights when arrested. So says the Fifth Amendment, and this was re-informed with Miranda versus Arizona, because remember, we call them Miranda rights when you're arrested. Next one is criminal law. This, of course, means a law has been broken. Example, Lil Wayne over here was arrested for criminal weapons possession. Lindsay Lohan was arrested for being drunk and disorderly, for DUIs. Elvis Presley was arrested for all kinds of things. But criminal law, again, a law has been broken. Our next one is civil law. This is a case between two people or parties, and a contract was broken. You didn't keep your word. You didn't pay when you were supposed to. An example of this is a landlord suing their tenant, someone who lives in their home, for rent money. If you don't pay your rent for a couple months and you tried to skip out on your bill, your landlord has the right to take you to civil court and sue you for the money that you owe him or her. Our next one is tort law, and it's a civil case between two people, again, that involves harm or neglect. So a law hasn't been broken, but a contract has been broken, and it involves someone getting hurt. So this says Torts Illustrated instead of Sports Illustrated. So this lady has just hit her head over here because this guy behind her is not doing his job. He was negligent. He neglected her. So some of you might have heard of this case before. A woman sues McDonald's for damages after she has a hot coffee burn. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in a few days when we talk about civil law. But she sued McDonald's for damages after that coffee burned her so badly that she had to stay in the hospital for about 10 days, and she had to have skin grafts all over her body because that coffee was about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember, the boiling point is about 110. So, coffee was pretty hot. So, tort law, again, involves harm or neglect. So, if you hear people on TV say something like, if you or your loved one has been diagnosed with mesothelioma, you may be entitled to compensation. You might hear that a lot, or something about maybe a hip replacement that doesn't work right. Whoever is entitled to compensation, those kinds of commercials, they're about tort law. Another kind is administrative law. These are laws made by the executive branch. Now this should have set off a few little buzzers in your head, that laws are usually made by the legislative branch, but the FDA or other agencies in the executive branch can pass laws if the legislative branch has maybe missed something, or if the executive branch feels that in order to carry out the tasks of the executive or the bureaucracy, they need to make a different law. So this would be like the Federal Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, passing a law that requires packaged food to be labeled. So if you look on all of your packaged food that you get from the store, it says nutrition facts on the back. So that would be an administrative law. Remember, these are made by the executive branch. Our next one is statutory law. These are all of the laws made by made by the legislative branch put together. So if someone says, well, it's against the law, and you think, well, the only laws that I have seen are the Constitution. All the rest of the laws that the legislative branch has passed throughout the years are known, all put together, are known as statutory law. Another one is common law. This is made by the judicial branch, and it's based on precedent. Started in England. Here's some people from Parliament with their little wigs on. So again, common law is made by the judicial branch. It's based on precedent, their past decisions. And international law, these are laws that are made between countries, and the United Nations is a group of 93 countries that enforce all these laws together. So this is a law between countries, as in if you declare war on someone, or if your country kills the leader of another, you're going to war with them. Also that you can't commit crimes across country borders, and if you do, there's a special set of police who will come and enforce that law, known as Interpol. Okay, and the United Nations enforces the law. And again, international law are laws between countries. Moving on to types of crime, the first one are crimes against people. This is causing harm to someone or damaging their property. So this could be assault and battery, or this could be vandalism, or stealing someone's possessions. So causing harm to someone or their property. Our next one is victimless crime. There is no victim, but the law is still broken, like drug use. You're only hurting yourself, no one else. Gambling, hopefully, you're only digging out of your own bank account and not someone else's. Prostitution, you're hurting yourself. Public intoxication, you're acting a fool, only hurting yourself, and making everybody else around you pretty uncomfortable. So when you think victimless, you should probably think Vegas. Okay, here's an example of a casino over here. This one on the right-hand side is in Asheville. The Cherokee tribe runs this Harrah's Casino in Asheville, North Carolina. Our next type of crime is white-collar crime. These are centered around money. Some examples of these would be some embezzlement, like if you skim money off the top of something. Identity theft and investment fraud, like if you're investing in the stock market, and if you commit fraud, and if you tell someone to buy stocks that you know are bad, or you tell someone some secrets about the stock market that they shouldn't know, that is also investment fraud. So think of someone who has a white collar on, somebody who probably works in the business field. This would be crime centered around money, white collar crime. An example of this would be Martha Stewart. I don't know if you know who she is. She's that white lady who cooks a lot. And she was arrested a while back and put on house arrest and had an ankle bracelet for investment fraud because she made some shady choices in the stock market. Our next one is property crime. Crimes that destroy someone else's land or belongings. So arson, burning something. Vandalism. This is Tiger Woods' car after his angry wife got a hold of him. I say, you go girl, you do you. Or graffiti. So if you tag the side of a building that you're not supposed to, that is vandalism. You can be arrested for this. It's crimes against property. Organized crime is the next one, and involves many people. It is structured. There is a higher up person and lower down people. So an example of this, I guess when you think organized crime, most people think the mafia. So here's The Godfather, just so you can have an example in your head. So it involves many people and it is structured. Some examples of this are drug trafficking, human trafficking, and gangs. Gangs are definitely organized crime. You have someone who is the head of the gang, you have their right-hand guys, the middle of the road people, and then the foot soldiers who do all the work. And this applies to drug trafficking, human trafficking, gangs, mobs, something like that. Our next one is war crimes or crimes against humanity. These are crimes that violate people's basic human rights. These are usually found against dictators or very corrupt leaders. This guy, you know who he is. This is Hitler. He was found guilty of crimes against humanity, as well as a lot of his Nazi officials. This is Saddam Hussein, the former leader of Iraq before he was killed. He was hung for his crimes against humanity. He used poison gas against his people to move them out of places where he didn't want them. This is, I'm not sure what his first name is, but his last name is Nedic, and he was a World War II leader of Serbia. He was a little cray as well. He did not like his people. He was a friend of Hitler and was the head of Serbia back in the day in World War II. So our last type of crime is crimes against humanity. And this has been Criminal Law.